Happy Monday! Another vlog, the same collection of projects though. So this week I really want to get a huge amount done on a lot of the projects that have been kind of the focus on the vlog for the last couple weeks. I'd even like to finish off one of the projects, maybe not more than one. I also have big plans for this weekend. So on Saturday there is the grand opening of a local yarn and quilt shop not too far from my place. So I'm really excited to go check that out. The current yarn and quilt shops that are in the city I live in are kind of on the opposite side of the city, and this one's much closer to me, so I'm really looking forward to that one opening on Monday or on Saturday. And there's also a Fiber Fest happening not too far away from where I live as well. I've never been to Fiber Fest before. This one's just like at a community center on the weekend, so I'm not sure how big it'll be, but I'm really interested to go and check it out and see what's happening. So that's going to be something I'll bring you guys along on Saturday. Other than that, I'm hoping to get a good amount of done on the macrame. Like I talked about last week, I don't think I'll do like a clip every single day to show you the progress. I might just show you the progress at the end of the week, unless something really interesting happens sometime in the week. Otherwise, it would just be the same clip of me doing some macrame for 15 minutes every day, but I'm really trying to stick to that. I'm also wanting to get a good amount of work done on the Maker tank top. I would like to get a whole nother ball of yarn done. So like I talked about last week, I've gotten one ball of yarn, which has gotten me about 15 centimeters up. So I think a second ball of yarn will get me the rest of the centimeters, another 15 centimeters up, which will be the body in the straight stockinette. So that's the plan. Hopefully I can get to that. That's definitely like an at night project that I've been doing. So hopefully I can make some pretty good progress on that. And then the last two projects, I really want to finish the crochet daisy blanket. That's been hanging around for a little over a month at this point, and I'm just a little bit tired of looking at it. So last week I had finished adding the 5th and 6th rows to it. So this week I'm hoping I can do the 7th and 8th and a border around it. If I can get that all finished, it'd be really great. A great like stash busting. I think it'll have pulled out like 9 or 10 balls off of my acrylic wall. And then also just finishing a project always feels really great. And then the last thing I'm hoping to get done is the jacket. So I'd really like to finish the hood and the back of the jacket, and then quilt all of that and quilt the arms and the pockets. So if I can get all of that done this week, I think I'd be in a really great position to finish off the jacket. I'm traveling on April 16th, so I'd really like the jacket to be done so I can bring that on my trip, and that's 17 days from now. If I can get everything I'm hoping to get done this week, so next week I can just focus on finishing the front panels and then putting it together. Hopefully I can get it done by the 16th. I think I'm underestimating how much time it's going to take to put it together, because all those raw edges will need to be bound as well. But if I can at least get the machine work done, I can bring the jacket with me and like hand bind the stuff at the end. So we'll see. That's the plan for that, at least, and generally the plan for this week. So come along, see what gets done, and maybe even craft along with me. Okay, I've gotten so much done on this crochet blanket. I had a couple kind of listening meetings earlier today, so I was able to do a lot of work on the blanket. I've connected all 8 rows together, and then I did a couple rounds of single crochet all the way around the blanket as a border, and then as the final more decorative border, I've been doing these baubles, which is a little difficult to show while also holding the camera, but this is what they look like all the way around. I'm about halfway finished the blanket doing the last border round. I'm really enjoying the baubles. I think they're super cute. I'm gonna add just like a little bit of whimsy to the whole thing, so very excited about that. I'm almost positive I'll be able to finish this tonight. So then this blanket that's been around for like a month and a half, maybe 2 months, will finally be finished. So very excited to get that done, and then I'll get some nice pictures to show you guys the final product. Finished the daisy blanket last night. I'm very happy with how it's turned out. It's perfect. It's exactly how I envisioned it. I'm really happy with the like dark blue that I chose to go between the daisy squares. And then I'm really happy also with this bobbly border. It just adds a lot of whimsy to the whole blanket, especially with these like 70s colors. I feel like the baubles add a good amount of whimsy. So I'm very excited about that. I'm happy that it's finished. It has stuck around for, God, a month and a half, maybe even 2 months at this point. So I'm really glad that it's done. And like I was talking about last night, it did eat a lot of yarn off of my acrylic wall. So I'm also very happy with that. So now that that scrap busting project is finished, I'm oscillating on whether or not I should start another crochet project. Generally, I like having like one sewing project going on and then one knitting or crocheting project, but because my knitting project is that tank top, it's just a lot of very repetitive stockinette stitch. It's a little boring, and so it's not necessarily something that I want to work on for like a couple hours every single night. So I might pick up another crochet project. I'm debating whether or not I just go straight to my next scrap busting project, or if I take a detour into like an amigurumi pattern. I think I might take a detour into an amigurumi pattern, and I'll get into like that whole part of what I do when I film that clip. But generally, just to kind of finish off the whole discussion about scrap busting, I have that wall full of acrylic yarn. I'm really hoping I can completely get rid of everything by the end of this year. So either that'll be me using it for scrap busting projects, or at a certain point I think I might just give it away. I know that there's a community like crafting supplies place at a store nearby. They kind of gather supplies for the community to use. So I might drop off the rest of the acrylic there when I feel like I've used everything I wanted. Of the remaining scrap busting projects, there's like 2 or 3. So the first one is little flowers for the wedding. We have a couple different places in the decor that those are going to come around. So I need to make a lot of those flowers, like 50 or 60 of them. They don't take that much time. They're just a little tedious. So I'm really hoping I can use a lot of my scraps for that rather than like the bigger balls that I have. And then there's 2 scrap busting blankets that I want to finish. So another one's like the very classic granny square blanket. I've never made a classic granny square blanket, so that's one of them. I can't decide if I want it to be like a crib size blanket or a full size blanket. I'm really into crib size blankets just because they're quicker to make, but a full size blanket would use up a lot more yarn. I think it'll be a little bit of a test to see, because I definitely don't want to have to buy more yarn for these. So it'll be a test to see whether or not I have enough yarn to make a full size blanket. And then the second one is a Christmas blanket. I have a lot of like shades of red and shades of green in my acrylic that's left over. So I feel like that'd be nice to just make a Christmas blanket that can be tossed on the couch or something. So those are the scrapbusting projects that I'm hoping to tackle sometime, between now and December of 2025. But I don't think I'm going to jump into one right away. Scrapbusting's a little bit exhausting just because you have so many ends to weave in, and there's so many balls of yarn that you have to keep track of, like if you really want to do something that's a bunch of different colors. So I think I might hold off on doing another scrapbusting project just for a little while, work on something else, and then come back to that. So that's the general plan. Now that I've talked it out, pretty sure I'm going to move on to an amigurumi project, maybe later today. My favorite type of crafting is definitely crochet. I learned how to do this about 10 years ago, taught myself via the internet, and I was immediately obsessed with amigurumis. That's actually the thing that started me wanting to learn how to crochet. I believe my first ever amigurumi, it was either a doll or one of those star-bellied Sneeds from the Dr. Seuss books, but I'll try and track down a picture and post it here. I'm actually quite proud with how those came out, even though they were my first ever amigurumi projects. So I learned very early on, in 2014, maybe 2015, and I just ran with it. I loved making amigurumis. I found patterns online, I bought books, I was really, really obsessed with it. During the pandemic, I fell into a little bit of a slump with my creations, and so I texted my sister and I asked her if she had any ideas, and she suggested strawberry cows, because it was around the time when strawberry cows were a really big thing on the internet. So I ended up making a whole series of 6 different crochet patterns of different fruit cows, and that pattern is still available to this day on my Ravelry and my Etsy. This is what the picture looks like, and I believe my sister has the original toys of that. I'm very proud of them. They came out super cute. It's something that I get a lot of compliments on to this day, and I was really, really happy with those. So those were the first patterns that I really self-drafted, and then I went on an absolute spree these last couple of years making my own patterns. So earlier this year, I looked into how many patterns that I have finished but not yet published the pattern online, and I have 28. unpublished patterns. And that doesn't include some patterns that I have like made the thing of, but I never wrote down exactly what I had done in the pattern. And it also doesn't include some patterns that I have published online, but I would really like to pull down and then rework. So at minimum, I have 28 crocheted amigurumi patterns that are just sitting in this little black book of unfinished, unwritten up patterns. So at the beginning of this year, one of my goals was to publish at least 12 of those patterns. And so far I've published 2. I published Sharon the Mermaid in late January, early February. And then I published a pickup truck. This is a bigger version of that same pickup truck. I published that in the beginning of March. I also have another pattern that's going up hopefully this weekend for a little car and trailer. So I decided that my next thing that I want to work on is another pattern to go up. So I went through this giant cabinet of unfinished patterns and I picked what I wanted to do next, which is this VW bus that I made probably well over a year ago. Very, very happy with how well this one turned out. And so I'm going to be recreating that this week and writing up the pattern. So like I was talking earlier in the video about trying to get rid of some of my acrylic stuff, this is a pattern that was made in acrylics. So the process for which I usually write up my patterns is that I'll redo it at least one more time. And while I'm redoing it, I transfer over what notes I've taken in my notebook into the file that I'm writing, usually on my iPad because I do it on the couch. And then sometimes redo the whole toy a second time just so that I definitely have the pattern done. So because this pattern, especially because this pattern was done in acrylic yarn, pulled out all the colors I think I'll need in my cotton yarns. And then I also have to track down where the pattern is in this notebook. And then I'll start making another toy, this time in cotton, and writing down the pattern. So hopefully I can get that one sorted, ready to go, and published probably later this month, maybe May, I'm not 100% sure. But that's the next crochet pattern that we're going to work on. I think it's been a couple days since I filmed anything of consequence, but on Monday I finished the crochet blanket that I've been making for a couple weeks, and then on Tuesday I believe I started on the amigurumi. Wednesday and Thursday I've been just kind of busy with other things, so I haven't had much time to do crafting, but I have been doing my macrame. I've done the macrame every single day. Earlier today I finished the quilting the sleeves for the jacket, so now I'm going to work on the back piece. That's the single biggest piece that's left, and so I think that'll give me a good idea of like how much of the fabric that I have left that I'm gonna work through. And it's also fairly simple because the dimensions are pretty much the same all the way across, so I don't have to make any thoughts. I just have to figure out how long the middle piece is and then replicate that going out. It's gonna have the same angled pieces that the sleeve has, and I think the angles pointing up towards the neck is the plan for that one. So I'm gonna start on that, just work on that for a little while, see how far I can get into that. And then I'm not sure. I think I want to watch a movie tonight. It's probably gonna be another like crocheting night. Working away maybe on that amigurumi or finishing another ball of the sweater. I'm not sure. The tank top. Okay, horrible news. I just finished one half of the back panel and I don't have enough to finish the whole thing. So I counted it out and I need 24 more squares of the light green and I only have 14. So I'm going to have to go to the fabric store and get more fabric. Question is when? I don't feel like doing it tonight at all. So I'm not gonna go tonight, which means I'll just focus on crocheting and knitting for the rest of the day. And tomorrow is the Fiber Fest that I was hoping to go to, and then also the grand opening of the fabric stores. I don't really want to go to the other fabric store as well. There is a chance that the new fabric store would have the same stuff that I need, because this is just like Kona cotton. So there's a chance that they would have Kona cotton. So I might bring like one square of each color just so that if they happen to have the shades I need. But I also need more batting for the rest of the jacket, so I don't know if I want to risk buying a different type of batting at this new store that doesn't match the batting that's going to be everywhere else in the jacket. So I'm not 100% sure, but I guess the plan is then if they don't have it at the new store, I can just go to like the Old Faithful store and get more of the fabric and more of the batting, because I need at least one more package of batting. In terms of what I'm going to get in additional fabric, I had originally gotten 1/4 meter of all the colors except for the light pink, which I got 1/2 meter of. And so finishing out the back panel with what I have would leave me at like 60 to 70% finished. I still have both halves of the hood and the front. So if we think about what that is compared to what I finished, I would say that the two front panels will be roughly equal to what I used for the back panel. And then the two halves of the hood will roughly be equal to what I had for the sleeves, slightly less than that, which just leaves like that little bit from the pockets. So I think leave myself definitely enough fabric. I'm probably gonna get 1/4 of each color again, and then another half of the light pink. Worst case scenario, I have some leftover fabric, which is fine. I'll use it up in a quilt or something later. So I'm not too concerned about having leftover fabric. I'm more concerned about not having to go back to the fabric store for like the 16th time. So that's the plan. Hopefully tomorrow, maybe there'll be a lot of footage of me going to stores tomorrow. And so for the rest of tonight, I'm a little tired of sewing. So I might just spend the rest of the night working on the VW bus and knitting my tank top. So that's the plan going forward. Okay, so I started working on the VW bus a couple nights ago. I made all of the wheels. And then last night I started working on the top of the VW bus. The thing that's really slowing me down is when I originally wrote down the pattern, I had done a lot of amigurumis all at the same time that used very similar increase techniques. And so instead of writing down like exactly what I was doing on every row, I instead just wrote down how many stitches the original chain was and then said increase like usual. For this many rows to get this kind of rectangular shape that then gives you the shape of the amigurumi. Now that I'm writing the pattern out, I need to actually count those, because I can't, in a pattern you can't just say increase like usual. People don't know what that means. So I need to be counting out every single row and making sure that that math works out. But it does mean that it takes both a lot more brain power and a lot more time than if I was to just make a finished pattern. However, this is a much simpler pattern than say the car or the pickup truck or some of my other bigger patterns, because it really is after you finish that original rectangle, it's just single crochets all the way down until you get to the bottom. So it is actually a very, very easy and approachable pattern. The pickup truck and the car are also very easy and approachable. You just need to count slightly more. But I think it's just getting this beginning section started that's taking me a little while to like get into the whole process. Saturday was the Spring Fiber Fling. That's where I started, at least. This was an event. It had 12 local vendors. Most of them were hand dyers, but some of them weren't. They were selling like items, and it was so inspiring. It was so busy as well. Tons of people. This is like the only B-roll I could get where there was no people in all of the shots, but it was so inspiring. I really needed to make sure when I went there that I stuck to the plan that I went there with, because otherwise I would have left with a million orphan skeins, because there's just so many beautiful things. And it was great seeing local dyers, and some of the vendors even used local wool, which was really, really amazing to see. One of these vendors that's coming up, she had the most amazing handmade crochet hooks, and I wanted one so bad, but I decided not to purchase one because I have a million crochet hooks. And then I came home and I realized that the crochet hook I use all the time is broken, and she had the exact size thing. I'm so upset I didn't buy them. I'll have to get something off of Instagram. This is the first skein I got. It was botanical fibers, and it's in the colorway Spring Leaf. I want to make the grow your own cardigan pattern, but I want to make it into a capelet. I'll insert pictures of the actual shawl and then what I'm hoping to make from it, but it's a lacework pattern. I'm really excited about that. More details when I get into it. The next skein I got was from Lichen and Lace, and this is in Wildflower Remix. And I really wanted a yarn to make a baby sweater or cardigan out of, so I thought this would be a super beautiful colorway. I don't have a pattern for it yet, but I'm sure I'll be able to find a pattern that could use this yarn. And then I also got these sock yarn skeins. They're like mini sock skeins. This one is called Holly Hooks. It's also from Lichen and Lace, and it's so comfy, it's so cozy. I think they make the nicest socks, and I ended up getting this yellow skein that will be like the heel, the toe, and the top cuff, because I really like that look for socks. And it reminds me of strawberry lemonade, and I think they'll be so beautiful when they're finished. I can't wait to actually make these. Okay, and then the final thing I got, I couldn't leave him behind. It was this absolutely adorable Highland cow. He was felted. He was made by Lulabelle Felting, and he was just adorable. He lives on my bookcase now. I love him so much. He's adorable. Next, I went to Knit and Stitch Dartmouth, which is the local store that was opening on the same day. It was unbelievably busy. Those were the only 2 clips of B-roll I got. There was so many people there. But I ended up getting a couple things. I got these stitch markers, which is great because my current stitch markers are just safety pins. So it's really great that I got those. I also got these stitch stoppers. I think I fell into the hype a little bit with these. I don't know if I'll use them that much, but they are really high quality, which is nice. And they weren't too expensive. They're like a silicone, and there's a hole that you can stick the end of your knitting needle into. And then this, I was so excited to see this. I've been looking for one of these for years, but it's used to press open seams when you're quilting instead of having to always go over to your iron. I'm so excited that I finally have one of these. And then I also got some more yarn. I got the Sanoa Wool Dreamers in green. I'm not sure what I'm gonna make with it yet, but I'm really excited to have it. Okay, so then the rest of the day, I was just prepping for really finishing this quilted jacket. So I ended up chatting on the phone with my friend for a couple hours, and I cut up almost all, or maybe all of the cotton that I purchased earlier today. I ended up going to the usual fabric store that I go to pick up this cotton just because they didn't have it at the new store that I went to. So I ended up purchasing all of the new fabric I needed, and then I chatted on the phone with my friend for a couple hours and just cut out all of those 2x2 squares that I need. Well, I'm hoping I've cut out all the 2x2 squares I need. I'm not 100% sure, but at least for right now, I can really focus on making the fabric and not having to pause all the time to cut out more fabric. So that's what I did all of Saturday. And then we can move on to Sunday. All right, so this is Sunday. I didn't feel great on Sunday, so I also just didn't feel like making a bunch of clips explaining what I was doing, so here's another voiceover. But in the morning, I went to a knitting circle at the Stitch and Knit in Dartmouth, at the Knit and Stitch in Dartmouth. And it was really nice seeing women there, and we all crafted together, which was lovely. I came home and I finished this back panel for the jacket. It was so difficult to cut because it's cut on the fold. And so at different points, where the seams lined up, there was 4 or 5 layers of fabric that you had to cut through. My rotary cutter had a really, really difficult time doing that. But I was able to cut it all out, and then I made the sandwich for the back of the jacket. And then I think after this I called my mom, and we chatted for a couple hours. So again, we just talked. I didn't get anything done. But later in the night, I did do a little more sewing. A clip will come up in a moment to show that. And then I'll show at the end of the video exactly how far I got. But between all the sewing that I did this week, I've gotten a good amount of stuff done this week. It doesn't seem like it maybe on paper. I was hoping I'd have more tangible parts of the jacket done, but especially with all of the pieces cut out at least, I think that'll speed up the process for next week. And I do only have, I think, 3 pieces left, and then all of the quilting is done for the jacket. So it feels feasible. I still don't know if I'll get it done by my 16th deadline, but fingers crossed, maybe I will. It would be nice if I did. The other thing that I made such good progress on this week was the macrame. 2 clips are about to come up. One will be, the first one is what I started with on Monday, and then what I ended with on Sunday. And I'm really happy with the progress. I think it's coming across beautifully. I'm so happy. To close out this week's vlog, I've got a couple updates on the different projects that I've been working on. I finished adding the second ball onto our tank top. This is 30 centimeters of length here, so I think that might be where I stop. I'm gonna check to see what the rest of the measurements will make it, because this is just a little more than the cropped version. I just want to see like how short the cropped version is going to be before I decide if I'm going to add a little more length in the body. So that's where I am with the tank top. With my crochet project, a reminder, this is the final, and I got about this far in, so I'm still working on the bottom here, and then I have to add the wheels and the back lights, but I'm almost finished this whole thing. It's very quick workup, which is really nice. So that leaves the quilted jacket. Got the body finished here. It is sandwiched. It's not quilted, but it is sandwiched and ready to quilt. And then I have the piece of fabric finished for the hood. Though again, this is not sandwiched, it's not cut, and it's not ready to quilt. But that's where I've gotten on my sewing this week. Feels, when I look at it, like I've gotten less done, but I did, you can see them on the counter just right there. I've cut out all of the fabric that I think I'll need for the rest of the pieces. Hopefully I'll just be able to produce them really quickly, especially since I know exactly what dimensions I need for the other half of the hood. So all I need to do is figure out the dimensions for the other 2 front halves, and then I'll be finished. All of the pieces, at least. My hope is that in the next week and a bit, I'll be able to finish the last 2 pieces, quilt everything, and then at least sew it together. All the bias binding that's around the whole garment, one half is going to be machine sewed on, and then the other half is going to be hand sewed on. But if I can at least get all of the machine sewn parts done before I leave, I can just bring the jacket with me and hand sew on the bias binding while I'm on my mini vacation. Just the plan, at least. Hopefully I can get that finished this week. That's a really, really big goal. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really, really greatly appreciate it. Please subscribe, leave a like, comment below if you have anything to say, and I hope I see you at the next video. Thank you so much.